Jessica stood in her small Los Angeles kitchen with her phone pressed to her ear, her jaw tight even though her voice stayed calm. She had already said what needed to be said, and the call should have ended there. But then she added one more sentence, flat, deliberate, and felt the shift immediately. On the other end of the line, Melissa went quiet. Not the polite pause she used in public, but the stunned kind that meant something had gone wrong. Jessica could picture her mother's practiced smile faltering, color draining from her face. Melissa had assumed Jessica was bluffing. She always did. That was the danger of being dependable for too long. People forgot how much power you held once you stopped trying to be chosen. Jessica ended the call and stared at the dark phone screen, her reflection faint and unfamiliar. She was 28, and for as long as she could remember, Christmas had been her responsibility. Not officially, Melissa was the hostess everyone praised, but in reality, it was Jessica who planned the menu, organized the group chats, managed the decorations, and quietly fixed every disaster. Every candle, every playlist, every matching photo moment passed through her hands. And now, the same woman who built her reputation on that invisible work had told her she was not needed, not invited, not welcome. Jessica didn't cry. She didn't beg. Something inside her hardened, steady and cold, as she realized this year would be different. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from today. Your one click really helps support the channel. Melissa had delivered the words like a favor, her tone smooth and reasonable, as if excluding her daughter was an act of kindness. That had always been her skill. She hurt people, then framed it as mercy. To the outside world, Melissa was the woman who made Christmas magical. Perfect tree. Perfect food. Perfect family photos. Friends and relatives praised her every year, clapping as if she were the architect of warmth itself. They never saw the quiet work behind the scenes. They never saw Jessica's spreadsheets, the reminder texts, the emergency store runs when something essential was forgotten. They never saw Jessica scrubbing pans long after midnight while Melissa accepted compliments like a queen at the end of a performance. Mark, Jessica's older brother, liked to joke that she was just good at this stuff. Easy to say, when his only job was to show up. Jessica's mind drifted to last Christmas, when the oven broke an hour before guests arrived. Melissa panicked, already preparing her speech about bad luck and how hard she tried. Jessica fixed it without drama. She ordered emergency catering, rearranged the schedule, and told everyone the menu change was intentional. Melissa was praised for being creative. Jessica received a distracted, "Thanks, Jess," before Melissa turned back to the camera. Standing alone in her kitchen now, Jessica felt something dark settle into place. If she disappeared, that house would not simply feel emptier. It would collapse. She was the one who reminded Uncle Peter about his flight. She was the one who picked up Ruth so she wouldn't sit alone. Without her, Christmas didn't run. It stalled. For the first time, Jessica understood that she was holding more power than she had ever allowed herself to see. Melissa believed Jessica would do what she always did, feel guilty, cry a little, and still show up with gifts and cookies. Jessica was done playing that role. She opened the family Christmas group chat and stared at the long list of names, aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, even her father, Thomas. At the top of the screen sat a word she had never thought about before. Admin. It felt heavier now, almost dangerous. She didn't type anything. She let the idea breathe. What happened when the person everyone treated as disposable stopped doing the invisible work that held everything together? The next morning, her phone buzzed before her alarm. Mark. She let it ring before answering. He skipped the greeting and slid straight into his familiar role. Peacemaker. He said Melissa didn't mean it. He said she was stressed. He said she had been doing everything alone for years. Jessica laughed, sharp and humorless. Doing what alone? She asked. Mark ignored the question and moved on. Even if Jessica wasn't coming, could she still handle the group chats, the reminders, the playlist? Jessica felt her grip tighten on the counter. So I'm not needed, she said evenly, but my work is. Silence followed. Then Mark sighed and accused her of being dramatic. That silence told her everything she needed to know. Mark reminded her of everything Melissa had paid for. College. The apartment deposit. Jessica felt something twist in her chest. She reminded him that she hadn't finished college because the money ran out. Mark grew defensive, muttering that times had been tight. Then he slipped. He mentioned a fund. One word. Enough. When Jessica asked him to explain, he stumbled and tried to backtrack. She ended the call before he could repair the damage. Her hands weren't shaking from sadness. They were steady with clarity. That afternoon, she searched through old emails and files she had ignored for years. It didn't take long. A message from a bank confirmed it. An account in her name. A college fund. Drained 5 years earlier. The same year Mark had been rescued from his credit card debt. The withdrawal authorization carried Melissa's name. Jessica's signature looked wrong. Sloppier than she remembered. The betrayal clicked into place with brutal precision. Melissa hadn't just erased her from Christmas. She had been quietly cutting pieces out of Jessica's future. That evening, Jessica opened the family chat again. This time, she created a new group and added everyone except Melissa and Mark. Her message was calm and polite. She explained that Melissa was overwhelmed and wanted to scale things back. Jessica offered to host anyone who still wanted to celebrate. When she hit send, the replies came fast. Relief. Gratitude. Offers to bring food. Jessica watched her mother's perfect holiday begin to tilt without a single raised voice. By nightfall, Jessica's apartment felt alive in a way it never had before. People asked what time to come, what they should bring, whether kids were welcome. She answered calmly, efficiently, the same way she always had. Only this time, it was for herself. She didn't mention the college fund yet. That truth needed timing. Between messages, she set her phone on the counter and recorded a video. She spoke clearly and without emotion. She talked about the invisible work, the manipulation, the way she had been treated like staff instead of family. She named no one. She cried for no one. When she finished, she scheduled the video for the evening of the 24th and set the phone down. Then she started making calls. She cancelled the catering order Melissa relied on every year. She cancelled the linen rentals that made the house look polished. Finally, she called Ruth and invited her personally. Ruth laughed with genuine excitement, unaware of the quiet storm unfolding. When Jessica checked her phone again, Melissa had created a smaller family chat and was spiraling, calling Jessica dramatic and selfish. Jessica didn't respond. She was done explaining. She was done fixing things for people who never listened. For the first time in her life, she wasn't preparing someone else's Christmas. She was building her own. The next morning, Jessica woke to her phone vibrating non-stop on the nightstand. Messages stacked one after another, cousins asking questions, an aunt offering to bring dessert, a neighbor confirming a time. Her apartment, once quiet and temporary, was turning into a center of gravity. She sat up slowly, letting the reality settle in. This was no longer an idea. It was happening. She made coffee and leaned against the counter, scrolling. Mixed in with the cheerful messages was a missed call from Mark and a long text she didn't open. She already knew the tone. Calm down. Don't do this. Think about Mom. Jessica deleted it without reading. She wasn't interested in translations anymore. Mid-morning, she opened the family chat again, watching as plans shifted naturally. People coordinated rides. Someone suggested games for the kids. Another asked about music. No one mentioned Melissa directly. That absence felt louder than anger. Jessica realized something unsettling and freeing at the same time. The family didn't revolve around her mother the way Melissa believed. It revolved around access, communication, and effort. Things Jessica had always provided quietly. She closed the app and focused on practical tasks, cleaning the apartment, making a shopping list, clearing space. Each small action grounded her. This wasn't revenge yet. It was separation. And separation, she was learning, required intention. In the early afternoon, her phone rang again. Mark. This time she answered. His face filled the screen, tense and irritated. What are you doing? He demanded, skipping any greeting. People are confused. They think Christmas is cancelled at Mom's. Jessica kept her voice steady. I told them Mom wanted something smaller, she said. Which is true. Mark shook his head. You're twisting things. No, Jessica replied. I'm taking her at her word. He accused her of going too far, of turning a family disagreement into chaos. Jessica listened without interrupting. When he paused, she spoke. She said no one needed me to come. I believed her. Mark ran a hand through his hair. This isn't about you. Jessica felt a brief, sharp laugh escape her. It's always been about me, she said. Just never in a way that mattered. Mark's frustration slipped into something closer to panic. Mom's worried, he said. She thinks you're pulling away. Jessica looked at her reflection in the dark screen. I already pulled away, she replied. She just noticed. She ended the call before he could respond, her hands steady, her breathing slow. That evening, Jessica sat at her table with her laptop open, the bank statement displayed in stark black and white. She studied it again, not searching for doubt but for closure. The numbers didn't change. The dates didn't soften. 5 years ago. Her name. An empty balance. She took a photo and locked it away, not ready to release it yet. Truth, she had learned, was most powerful when timed correctly. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Ruth popped up, cheerful and curious, asking what she should bring. Jessica smiled despite herself and replied that her presence was enough. That small exchange anchored her. Later, she noticed a new group chat appear. Immediate family only. Melissa was typing furiously. Messages rolled in accusing Jessica of overreacting, of embarrassing the family, of being ungrateful. Mark tried to mediate, asking everyone to calm down. Jessica watched without responding. The silence was intentional. For once, Melissa didn't have a stage. She had a room where her words echoed back unanswered. Jessica closed the app and turned off her phone. She needed space from the noise. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent and alive. For the first time in days, she slept deeply. 2 days before Christmas, the call finally came. Melissa. Not a text. Not a message passed through Mark. A direct call. Jessica let it ring long enough to make a point, then answered. Hello, she said calmly. Melissa didn't bother with greetings. What do you think you're doing? She snapped. Jessica leaned against the counter. I'm listening, she said. Melissa accused her of lying to relatives, of sabotaging Christmas, of being cruel. Jessica corrected her carefully. I told them what you told me, she said. That you didn't want a big crowd. That I wasn't needed. Melissa bristled. You know I didn't mean it like that. Jessica exhaled slowly. Then say what you meant, she replied. The line went quiet for a beat, then Melissa shifted tactics. She called Jessica sensitive. She minimized the work. You send a few messages, she scoffed. Bake some cookies. You act like a martyr. Heat rose in Jessica's chest, but her voice stayed even. You built traditions on my labor, she said. And called it nothing. Melissa inhaled sharply, then went for guilt. She reminded Jessica of sacrifices, of money spent, of everything she had done as a mother. Jessica felt the familiar pull, and resisted it. When Melissa mentioned money, something in Jessica settled completely. Your savings? Jessica asked quietly. Or mine? The silence on the line was different this time. Uncontrolled. Melissa asked what she was talking about, but the edge was gone from her voice. Jessica didn't explain yet. She didn't need to. Melissa recovered quickly, snapping that the money had been used for the family, that Mark had needed help, that emergencies required sacrifice. Jessica absorbed it without flinching. For everyone but me, she said. Melissa's voice hardened again. You think you're powerful now, she hissed. You think you can ruin my Christmas. Jessica pulled the phone slightly away from her ear, listening as Melissa continued, repeating the sentence again with sharper intent. No one needs you to come. Jessica brought the phone back and spoke calmly. Okay, she said. There was a pause, just long enough to feel deliberate. Then everything will be cancelled. She ended the call before doubt could creep in. Standing alone in her kitchen, Jessica opened the group chat she had created earlier. Her thumb hovered over the screen. The proof was ready. The truth was waiting. She didn't send it yet, but she knew she would. Jessica stood still for a long moment after the call ended, the phone heavy in her hand. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark screen, calm on the surface, resolute underneath. She opened the family group chat again, scrolling through messages she hadn't answered. People were already adjusting, already adapting. That told her everything. With a slow breath, she attached the bank statement screenshot. She typed carefully, choosing clarity over drama. Since Mom told me I wasn't needed this Christmas, I decided to host anyone who still wants to celebrate. Also, some of you have asked why I never finished college. This is part of the reason. She didn't add accusations. She didn't explain further. She hit send. The reaction was immediate. Questions flooded in. Confusion. Shock. Ruth sent a short voice message, her tone gentle but shaken, asking if it was real. Jessica replied once, plainly. Yes. I just found out too. After that, she stopped engaging. The conversation took on a life of its own. People compared notes, shared half-remembered stories, recalled moments that hadn't made sense before. It felt like watching a curtain lift. In the immediate family chat, Melissa exploded, calling it betrayal, calling Jessica cruel. Mark tried to calm her down, but the panic in his messages was obvious. He hadn't known Jessica had proof. He hadn't expected her to go this far. Jessica turned her phone face down and focused on preparing her apartment. What was coming couldn't be undone. And she wasn't trying to undo it. On the morning of December 24th, Jessica's scheduled video went live. She didn't watch it right away. She already knew what she had said. Instead, she cleaned, cooked, and moved through her space with quiet purpose. When she finally checked her phone, the notifications were overwhelming. Comments from strangers. Messages from people she'd never met thanking her for saying what they couldn't. Shares. Support. Jessica scrolled briefly, then stopped. The internet wasn't the point. Truth was. By late afternoon, her apartment smelled like garlic and cinnamon. Guests arrived in small waves, carrying casseroles, bags of bread, bottles of wine. Laughter filled rooms that had never held more than silence before. Ruth arrived holding Jessica's arm, eyes bright and watery as she looked around. "You did this yourself," she whispered. "All these years." Jessica squeezed her hand. "I did," she said. "And I'm okay." Somewhere across the city, Melissa was sitting in a house prepared for far more people than would arrive. Jessica didn't think about it. She focused on the present. On faces. On warmth. On something that finally felt honest. As evening settled in, Jessica's phone rang again. Thomas. She hesitated, then answered. His voice sounded older, tired. "What's going on?" he asked quietly. Jessica didn't soften it. "You saw the statement," she said. "You tell me." He sighed, explaining how things had been complicated, how money had been tight, how decisions had been made under pressure. Jessica listened, unmoved. "With my future," she said. "Without my consent." He didn't deny it. He asked if this was what she wanted, if humiliating Melissa was worth tearing the family apart. Jessica looked around her apartment. People crowded around the table, talking over each other, laughing, clinking glasses. It wasn't perfect. It was real. "I wanted the truth," she said. "Everything else is consequence." Thomas mentioned Melissa sitting at a table set for 20, with only a few chairs filled. Guilt flickered briefly in Jessica's chest, then faded. She remembered being 18, being told there was no money, watching her plans collapse quietly while no one looked back. "She chose this," Jessica said. "I just stopped covering for her." Thomas didn't argue. When the call ended, Jessica felt lighter than she had in years. Later that night, a sharp knock cut through the noise of the apartment. Jessica froze. For a moment, she thought she knew who it was. But when she opened the door, it was Mark. No coat. Red cheeks. A half-wrapped gift clutched in his hands. The hallway behind him was empty. "Can I come in?" he asked, uncertain. Jessica studied him. "Are you here for Mom?" she asked. "Or for me?" Mark exhaled. "I left," he said. "She spent the whole night yelling. Not apologizing. Just embarrassed." Jessica stepped aside. "Then come in," she said. "But I'm not doing this anymore. I'm your sister, not her messenger." Mark nodded and walked into the warmth, visibly startled by what he saw. People. Joy. A version of family he hadn't imagined without their mother at the center. He stayed quiet at first, then slowly relaxed. At one point, he caught Jessica's eye and mouthed a thank you. She didn't respond, but she saw the shift. It wasn't forgiveness. It was accountability beginning. Near midnight, when most guests had left and the apartment had settled into a tired hush, there was another knock. This time, Jessica knew. She opened the door just enough to see Melissa standing alone in the hallway, makeup smudged, phone clutched tightly in her hand. "No audience. No backup. Can we talk?" Melissa asked, her voice small. Jessica stepped into the hall and pulled the door nearly shut behind her. "About what?" she asked. Melissa said Jessica had ruined her Christmas. Jessica corrected her calmly. "I stopped pretending," she said. Melissa spoke about sacrifice, about holding the family together. Jessica listened, then replied. "Own it," she said. "But don't pretend you did it for me." Melissa admitted she shouldn't have said Jessica wasn't needed. She called her difficult. Jessica didn't move. "That's not an apology," she said. When Melissa asked what she wanted now, Jessica answered plainly. A relationship without control, she said. Or nothing. Melissa bristled, pride snapping back into place. I don't deserve this, she said. Jessica nodded toward the elevator. Then you know where the door is. Melissa waited for Jessica to bend. She didn't. Eventually, Melissa turned and walked away. Jessica watched until the doors closed. Then she went back inside. Inside the apartment, Mark looked up the moment Jessica stepped back in. Was that her? He asked quietly. Jessica nodded. She left. He hesitated, then asked, Did you say everything you needed to say? Jessica considered the question. I said the truth, she replied. That seemed to settle something in him. The night eased forward again, slower now. Someone put on music. A few people gathered plates and started cleaning without being asked. Jessica noticed that detail most of all. No orders. No pressure. Just people choosing to help. She sat on the couch for the first time all evening, exhaustion finally catching up with her. The room felt lived in, imperfect, warm. Mark hovered nearby, unsure of where to place himself. Eventually, he sat across from her. I didn't know about the fund, he said again, quieter this time. I should have asked. Jessica didn't argue. You should have, she agreed. The honesty didn't soften the moment, but it made it real. Mark nodded, accepting it. For once, he wasn't trying to fix anything. He was just there. That felt new. Jessica leaned back and let herself breathe. The chaos was done. What remained was choice. After midnight, the apartment slowly emptied. Hugs at the door. Promises to meet again soon. Ruth kissed Jessica's cheek and told her she was proud of her. When the door finally closed, silence settled gently over the room. Wrapping paper littered the floor. Glasses sat half full on the table. The tree lights blinked softly. Jessica moved through the space, cleaning without urgency. This wasn't duty. It was care. She thought about the house she hadn't gone to, the table she hadn't set, the role she hadn't played. Instead of regret, she felt distance. Healthy distance. Mark helped stack plates, then stopped. I don't know what happens next, he admitted. Jessica met his eyes. Neither do I, she said. But it doesn't look like before. He nodded. That was enough. He left soon after, quieter than when he arrived. Jessica locked the door and stood there for a moment, hand resting on the handle. For the first time, she wasn't waiting for the next demand. There was nothing left to brace for. Jessica sat alone on the couch, the glow from the tree casting soft shadows across the walls. Her phone buzzed once. A message from Melissa, unsent drafts piling up, then finally nothing. Jessica didn't reach for it. She thought about the years she had spent explaining herself, justifying her feelings, shrinking them to keep peace. Tonight, peace had come from refusal. She replayed the final moments in the hallway. The way Melissa had waited for her to bend. The way she hadn't. That was the difference. Boundaries weren't loud. They were quiet and unmoving. Jessica rested her head back and closed her eyes. The ache in her chest wasn't grief. It was release. She hadn't fixed her family. She hadn't saved anyone. But she had stepped out of a story that was never written for her benefit. That mattered. In the early hours of Christmas morning, Jessica stood by the window and watched the city below. Somewhere, Melissa was awake too, likely replaying the night in her own version, rewriting blame where it felt safer. Jessica accepted that. People told stories that protected them. She no longer needed to correct them. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a simple message from Ruth. You're always welcome at my table. Remember that. Jessica smiled and typed back a heart. The future felt uncertain, but not empty. She would decide what contact looked like. What forgiveness required. Or if it came at all. None of it would be automatic anymore. She wasn't the default solution. She was a person. And that shift changed everything. As the sun began to rise, Jessica cleaned the last dish and turned off the lights. She stood in the quiet apartment, aware of how much had ended and how much had begun. Christmas hadn't been ruined. It had been stripped of illusion. What remained was smaller, messier, and honest. Jessica felt tired, but grounded. She hadn't chosen chaos. She had chosen truth, and truth had rearranged everything around her. Tomorrow, there would be consequences. Conversations. Distance. Maybe repair. Maybe not. But tonight was hers. She went to bed knowing that whatever came next, it would no longer be built on her silence. Jessica woke late on Christmas morning, sunlight spilling across the living room floor. The apartment was quiet, but not empty. It felt settled, like a place that had finally decided what it was meant to be. She made coffee and stood by the window, letting the steam warm her face. There were no urgent messages waiting. No lists. No expectations. For the first time in years, the day belonged to her. She thought about how strange that felt, how unfamiliar freedom could be when you had spent your life being useful instead of valued. Her phone buzzed once. A short message from Mark. "I'm glad you didn't back down." Jessica stared at it for a moment, then replied simply, "Me too." She didn't know what their relationship would look like going forward, but she knew one thing: it would not be built on pretending. She finished her coffee slowly, enjoying the stillness. Outside, the city moved on as it always did, indifferent to family dramas and broken traditions. That indifference felt comforting. The world hadn't ended because she stopped holding everything together. It had kept turning. Later that afternoon, Jessica sat at her small table and opened her laptop. She didn't search for her video, didn't reread comments or messages. That chapter was already closed. Instead, she opened a blank document and began listing practical things. Finances. Boundaries. Next steps. She contacted the bank and scheduled an appointment. She drafted an email she might send someday, or might not, about repayment and accountability. There was no rush. For years, urgency had belonged to everyone else. Now, she moved at her own pace. She thought briefly about Melissa, about whether her mother would ever truly understand what she had done. The thought no longer carried the sharp edge it once had. Understanding was not something Jessica could force. She could only decide what she accepted. She closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair, feeling the quiet confidence of someone who had stopped negotiating her own worth. That evening, Ruth called to check in. They talked about ordinary things, the food, the weather, a neighbor's new dog. Near the end of the call, Ruth grew serious. "Families don't always change," she said gently. "But people can." Jessica smiled. "I did," she replied. When the call ended, she looked around her apartment again. The tree lights blinked unevenly. A few ornaments were crooked. Nothing matched. It was perfect. She realized then that Christmas hadn't been about revenge at all. It had been about ownership. About taking back the parts of herself she had given away piece by piece. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt steady. And that was better. In the days that followed, the noise faded. Conversations slowed. Some relatives reached out. Others stayed quiet. Melissa didn't call again. Jessica didn't chase her. Distance, she learned, was not the same as loss. Sometimes it was protection. She returned to work, to routine, to a life that now felt more aligned with who she was becoming. The old pressure to perform, to smooth things over, had loosened its grip. When she thought about the future, it no longer felt like something waiting to be taken from her. It felt open. On New Year's Eve, Jessica stood on her balcony and watched fireworks bloom across the city. She held no grudges in her hands, only clarity. She had not destroyed her family. She had stopped carrying a lie. Whatever came next would be built on truth or not at all. As the final burst of light faded into smoke, Jessica went back inside and closed the door behind her. The story was no longer about what she had taken away. It was about what she had claimed. And for the first time, it belonged entirely to her. Thank you for watching until the end. If the person who raised you looked you in the eye and told you that you weren't needed anymore, what would you do? Would you swallow the hurt and show up anyway, just to keep the peace? Or would you step away from the performance and build something honest for yourself instead? And if you were in Jessica's place, would you ever let her back in? Or would some doors stay closed for a reason? Tell me in the comments.